Welcome back to Give Me Credit. I'm J.S. Waldo, author of Mortgage Lending Explained, and we are here today with our credit guru genius, John Mackey, author of Credit Genius. You can find us both on Substack. John is at creditgenius.substack.com, and I am at jswaldo.substack.com. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How are you, JS?
I am doing well, thank you. You know, everybody, we have a guest today. We are welcoming Mike Brennan from the Realty School. His website is therealtyschool.com. Today's conversation is going to be a little different. Instead of focusing strictly on credit or underwriting, we wanted to step back and look at one of the most important people in the entire real estate transaction, the realtor. Most consumers see the finished product, the showing, the contract, the closing table. But very few people actually understand what goes into training a real estate professional, how continuing education works, or how much responsibility agents carry throughout a transaction. There's also a growing misunderstanding today that technology can somehow replace experience and guidance, negotiation, and professional representation. The reality is, though, that buying or selling a home is still one of the biggest financial decisions most people will ever make. So today, that long-winded intro, we wanted to give Mike Brennan an open floor to talk about real estate education, what his school provides, why continuing education matters, and why realtors still play such an important role in helping consumers navigate an increasingly complicated market. So hi, Mike.
Hello, JS. Hello, John. And thank you both for having me on.
Absolutely, Mr. Brennan.
We are very happy you're here. And we are going to jump right in. I was very excited about this topic, Mike, because I think it's very important. I talk about this in my mortgage site. It's okay. We can see your smiley face. Okay, you're back.
And I'm back. Weird.
It's okay. It happens. So for me, this was an important topic because, as I was saying, on the mortgage side, I feel like a lot of times realtors aren't given the credit that they deserve, and their expertise is not really spoken about too much. We really wanted to do that. So, Mike, for people outside the industry who may not understand how someone becomes a realtor, what's the actual education process required before a person can get licensed? What are the students really learning during that training?
Great question. And again, thank you for having me on. In most states, when dealing with getting a license, there will be some license education professional classes one would need to take. In some states, they mandate that you must have a high school diploma or a college degree. But most states, it's just going to be the state regulatory bodies mandated. This is what you have to take. For example, in Minnesota, 3 30-hour classes, a total of 90 hours, no high school diploma, and you pass a state-created exam, and now you're ready to apply for a license. On another extreme, you might have places like Texas, which requires 180 hours, plus you have to have letters of recommendation. It's like going to college almost in that state, and is everywhere in between. So as we go through and we have our learners coming in, we essentially have an outline that is mandated. We have to follow these topics. So, for example, what does the law say about real estate? What is the practice of real estate? It also gets into the fundamentals of how do you unlock the lockbox to get into the house? So we cover a broad brushstroke from the basics. And a lot of the way we teach it is you've never bought, you've never sold, you've never even listed a house for sale. And we want to teach you from the ground up all the correct ways of doing things. So it does involve things like financing. We cover items, and these might be test worthy by each individual state. Financing, appraisal, closing. How do we handle state-specific laws when it comes to the sale of a condominium or townhome? Items like that are going to be very, very specific, so that when we have them, what I call fly out of the nest at the end of our coursework, we're hoping they know how to show a house, write up an offer, overcome buyer's objections, meet a seller, state their value, get this of our classes and then become an active participating real estate professional.
Now, Mike, in that last that last answer you gave, you froze up a lot. But I'm going to go into this next question because you started beginning talking about it.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of consumers assume real estate agents, when they become realtors, in our case here by the education that you provide, when they show houses, there is obviously much more involved than that. From your perspective as an educator, what skills and responsibilities are realtors actually being trained to handle during a transaction? And maybe if you could go over the difference between a realtor and a sales agent.
And thank you. That's another good clarification. I like to use the analogy of a person who wishes to become an electrician. Well, that person's got to take some education. They got to pass a state required test. And for a period of time, they act as an apprentice and work their way up to a what they call a master certified person. Now, the person who just did all that work, all that education, might go out and decide, I'm going to join the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. So here's this electrician, and she's worked hard. She's gotten her education. She's gotten her apprenticeship. She has a choice. Should I join the union or not? Now, mind you, she's licensed to electrify properties, but she doesn't get the collective bargaining. She doesn't get the book of jobs. She doesn't get the benefits of being in the union. Well, to make that analogy come home to real estate, you got to be licensed in your state. And if you want to join the trade association, for a better term, not a union, and you get certain benefits there by being in the membership. For example, the word realtor. It denotes now that you will abide by a code of ethics. The word realtor now means that you have access to a bunch of different data that other licensees might not have access to. So while it's not mandatory to join a trade association, it is one of those things that has certain benefits and perks to it. Maybe that makes some sense, I hope, John?
Yeah, it does. But I'm thinking of our real estate companies here. Yeah. And I'm sure they're going to be a little bit different than all over the United States, but there are some major ones. But let's take, for example, RE/MAX, Realty Executives. What are some of the other ones in the state of Minnesota? They're all realtors. Am I correct in that?
I would say that most are. And I hope I haven't frozen up.
No, you're fine.
Okay, cool. But what happens in that one is you're going to see that if the brokerage you join is a member of the association, anybody who joins that company has to also join the realtor group. So there's been a lot of changes and disruptions with lawsuits and clarifications. But you're seeing that, I would say, like, for example, in Minnesota, 2/3 of the people in the state belong to the trade association. So it's a very large chunk. Now, where I'm originally from in New York City, nobody belongs to the realtor group. They created their own private trade group, and they have their own code of ethics and their own benefits packages that they offer. So there's 0% basically in New York, maybe 2%. Very, 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 very low. And what they do is they have their own trade association they've created. Yeah. So it varies depending on market.
Well, you really educated me on that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I agree. Mike, can you explain exactly, because I think everybody has heard the term numerous times, what is continuing education, or CE? You see it as CE a lot in the real estate industry. How often are they required to complete it? And why does it even exist? Why does the industry believe ongoing education is necessary after licensing?
And thank you, Jay. That's an excellent question also. And, you know, for a lawyer, they have to do continuing legal education. So we throw an extra letter in there, CLE, nurses and doctors. Now, for real estate agents, the continuing education is basically to inform you of up-to-date changes maybe in the law, some changes in disclosure requirements. Give a case point example in where one of the states we teach, Wisconsin, there are these people who are called wholesalers. And wholesalers are people who will go in and make offer to purchase a property. Then what they will do is sell their contract duty to an investor for a profit margin. And sometimes the seller of the property didn't even know that was going to go down. So in Wisconsin, they now have a law that says if you're going to be a wholesaler, you got to boom, 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 and boom. So if the real estate agent now is going to go talk with a seller, the seller's going to be like, yeah, I was talking to this person. They said they're a wholesaler. What is that? Now they can answer it effectively. But the important thing is to also bring home to light what the rights of the parties are with attract more buyers. It's actually to give them up-to-date information to protect the consumer.
Okay. Now, again, you froze up there at the end of the, but in our case, we're just going to move on here.
Okay.
So in your experience, what are some of the biggest changes in real estate law, contracts, financing, or consumer protection that make continuing education so important for realtors or agents today?
You kind of touched on it, Mike, but I think that's where you broke up. So I'm sorry if it's going to be repetitive to you, but it was a really good conversation.
Absolutely. I think when dealing with the topics under continuing education, a case in point is that many consumers hiring a professional want that professional to know how to negotiate. And sharpening that skill set and how you negotiate, the tools you can use, and how to effectively create a win-win situation is kind of an important consideration for many, many buyers and sellers. So taking classes to further that particular professional development is critical. But I think also when a law change comes down the road and it's of significant change, especially, or even if it's a minor change, it could be as simple as a time period for a homeowner, a buyer who just purchased a house, after the closing to run to the county and say, I want to protect my home and get a lower tax rate on my property taxes by homesteading it. They change the dates. And as the real estate professional goes through what's that?
Yeah, no. I was just nodding. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
But as the real estate professional now, we should be the ones who sit at the closing table who remind that consumer, remember, you have until December the 31st to get to the state, or the county rather, and record this. So even the law had changed years ago, it's still something that, just as an illustration, would be prudent to take away from real estate continuing education. Those little things are important.
Mike, you own and operate the Realty School. Can you explain what your school provides for new agents, experienced realtors, investors, and others trying to better understand the real estate business?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for the forum to be able to do that. I started teaching real estate just as a part-time thing on the side. And, just to add to my resume, when I would go out on listing appointments to say, hey, not only do I list and sell, I also teach this stuff. And I started doing that in 2002. Subsequently, the company that I used to work for tasked me with more and more classes. And I get to the point where I was in my head going, if I'm going to teach this much, I'm going to do it for myself. And so we opened up the Realty School back in 2012. So over the course of the years now, I've shifted from being a listing selling broker to just doing education only. One of the things as I look at the directive that we do as a company, education needs to meet 3 criteria. It needs to be fun, convenient, and informative. And if it doesn't meet all 3 of those criteria, it's not a class I want to teach. So the informative, fun, and electives that we come in, how do we present it, is really crucial as well. Now, when we do that for the new person coming in, again, we're going to teach them as if they've never bought, sold, leased anything. and we give them the basic groundwork of all the phrases and so forth. They'll never use them maybe in the real world. You know, the language we speak in some of our courses is all legalese. You know, the grantor conveying a fee simple absolute via a general warranty deed with a covenant of season.
No, you're just trying to impress
that.
us. You're just trying to impress us now, Mike.
But it says, it's really simple, is the seller going to give you a piece of paper that says you own it for forever, and they're swearing to goodness they are the owner. That's all that is. So how do we make that translation so that when they're in their practice of real estate section of the licensing course, they just don't look at the form and go, I have no clue what that paragraph means. I just fill in the blank? No. I want my learners to be able to take an entire paragraph and reframe it up in their language to explain it to the consumer so the consumer knows what the devil they're signing. It ain't just filling in the blanks. And the way I teach it is, it's really simple to fill them out. If you get stuck on a blank line, you don't know what goes there. Look at the word before the blank line. If it says date, put the date there. That's not too tough. But what I want you to do is to please explain to the consumer buyer what the Risk of Loss Act means, because that's 7 sentences in the form that we ain't just going to skim over. We're going to tell them what it means to them. Now,
You know, Mike, as you're describing this, you're describing the way that you educate people. My first knowledge of you was taking a class.
mhm.
And what impressed me, number one, in order for people to learn, they've got to be entertained. Whether that is now in 2-minute segments or an hour segment. The best instructors that I've ever had, be it college or wherever it was, the instructor was an entertainer up there in part. They're making the learning fun. So you were smart, you knew your stuff, and you entertained. Now, I don't know if I've ever told you about that, but that's what appealed to me. And so I laud you on that.
Oh, thank you, John.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you know, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see consumers make when they try to buy or sell property without proper representation? You know, who represents himself as a fool for a client.
Yeah.
Especially when contracts, disclosures, financing, compliance, and negotiations become complicated.
Mhm.
And you hit the nail on the head with what's going to be the complication. The big one, and it's regularly consistent, disclosure. And it's usually lack of disclosure. The big heartburn issue for most buyers who go into this thinking they can do it on their own using ChatGPT or another AI type of product is they think that they know more than they think they know. So they go into it and they say, well, I'm going to buy your house, but the seller of the property let's say it's a for sale by owner and the buyer is unrepresented. We have a potential for a massive set of problems. For example, in Minnesota, the law requires you as a seller of a house, duplex, triplex, and fourplex, you must make a written disclosure of material facts or do a waiver with the buyer. Well, if they don't, that civilian can get hit with a financial penalty from the state of Minnesota. It could also be a civil charge against that person of a gross misdemeanor. The purchaser then buys the property, no disclosure's been made, and then as they move in 6 months later, they find out they have a wet basement. They say, well, what's my recourse now? But they had no representation. They had no disclosures. So the problem that we're facing is when we're dealing with an unrepresented party, be it the seller, the buyer, the landlord, the tenant, not being aware of what's supposed to be done, disclosed, and that's consistently the biggest issue. I would say that getting the ability to have somebody tell me that where the situation I'm in has this potential outcome or this potential outcome. This is what I want to know. When I'm going into a lawyer and I'm saying I wish to file bankruptcy, will this do, and I give them my laundry list of wants. They tell me this could happen, that could happen. Oh, I never knew that. You know, and now I got the ability to make my decision, my course of action with my eyes wide open, and I can take my goal forward. And that's the value of the representative, because now you're accessing that 11 pounds of gray matter between your ears.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mine's a little lighter, Mike.
So real estate transactions involve lenders, title companies, inspectors, appraisers, insurance providers, and so many legal documents. How important is it for realtors to act as the coordinator and guide throughout the process? And how much of that role is overlooked by the public?
You know, the way you said coordinator, the term I use is conductor of the orchestra.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's really where we have to, as the real estate professional, make sure that all the dominoes are toppling over in the appropriate sequence. So the thing that we're seeing, which is rather, well, what I find interesting is the proliferation of people hiring other people to handle the nuances of between offer to closing, and then making sure that this paid person, and all they do nowadays is contact the lender, make sure the appraisal has been ordered, that the title work has been issued, that the title company's talking to the lender, etc. And that the real estate agent maybe wants to hire that out for a fee. And then some practitioners will say, no, I feel comfortable. That's me. I'm an old dog, so I used to do that all myself. Thursdays was my day where I would follow up on all my transactions and find out, where is the lender? Where is the title? Where is the insurance? Where are we, so that we can close this thing in 3.5 weeks? Yeah, it's crucial, I would say.
It's a kind of that hub of the bicycle. You know, I rode a lot of bicycles in my day, and I went out to Washington, D.C., did long distance trips, crossed mountains instead of my bike and broke spokes. My point with all this is that the hub is the basis of that wheel. And in order to get the transaction done, you continually need to make sure that everything's working smoothly in order to get it to closing. It's a complex transaction. This is not like a car. You know, it's a complex transaction. Now, when students leave your school and begin working with real buyers and sellers, what do you hope they understand most about professionalism, ethics, communication, and protecting the consumer during one of the biggest financial transactions of their lives?
Yes, and you know, we do the Code of Ethics class, for example, that gives new learners education on what the Code of Ethics says, but also continuing education.
Right.
But the goal here is, when a person goes out into the field, that they know that the children that are accompanying the buyers should not be jumping on the furniture, and that the protocol of showings is to knock on closed doors, some of the basics. Now, mind you, if I'm 19 years old and I'm taking a real estate licensing class, and yes, we've had people born in 2008 taking our license classes. I have shoes older than 2008. And as they're coming out and taking classes, they've never even leased a property, much less how do I get the key to open the door? How do I schedule the showing? How do I handle communications with the party? A thing that's rather important is, and somebody said this to me a long time ago, don't sell to people the way you buy. Sell to people the way they buy. And it noodled around in my head for a while. And it might be something like as simple as the buyer doesn't want phone calls for whatever reasons, work. I'd rather get text messages. Okay, we will accommodate the consumer to make sure they're feeling comfortable. Because as the real estate person, we have 4 objectives to meet. We want to make sure it's a safe and secure transaction, that we know what we're getting into when we're walking into a house, that there's no wire fraud. We want to help them maybe save money by looking at the value of the neighborhood. And if the house is overpriced, tell them about it. We want to save them time that way when they're filling out contracts, there's no, oh, I got to go back and redo that form. And really importantly is lower their stress and anxiety.
Right.
The way I always frame it up is the real estate agent is almost a lightning rod for stress. Yeah.
Great. Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what a lot of people don't realize too, and I had forgotten about this after my many years being out of the business, but at what point are you in that transaction? You may have 4 or 5 items going back to back to back to back to back to back. And if the beginning one falls apart, they all fall apart.
Yeah.
And that can be quite a strain. And that's why you do need a good realtor, a realtor that's graduated from your school in particular, to take care of that problem, to make sure that everything's flowing smoothly.
And you know, John, you hit something really important. It
Yeah.
isn't just about like filling out the forms, etc., but these are people's lives, and we're
Yeah.
having them uproot, move over. And then on the plus side, that I think many real estate professionals can maybe pat themselves on the back occasionally, but they forget, is that realtors change people's lives for generations. And then when we get that person into a house and that house goes up in value and they will it to their kid, and then the kid has something of value, if this person now has their children and their children, all of a sudden now the life-changing event of owning real estate has happened versus renting.
Yeah. What you're talking about is generational wealth.
Totally.
Yeah, generational wealth, exactly. Real estate is wealth. People
Yep.
people have to grasp that.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I think that what today's discussion really shows is that real estate is much more than opening doors and filling out the paperwork. We just got through saying that.
Yeah.
And every successful transaction is education, training, coordination, communication, and a constant need to stay current in a changing industry. Mike, you and your realty school are doing a lot in helping prepare realtors to handle real-world problems that consumers often never see until something goes wrong. Whether it's contracts, disclosures, financial issues, negotiations, ethics, or simply helping people avoid expensive mistakes, the role of professional education matters more today than ever before. And frankly, in a market that's becoming more complex by the year, informed guidance is not a luxury, it's a protection. And thank you for training the realtors to provide that product.
Yes, it's very important.
It's our honor to do so.
So this has been Give Me Credit. I'm going to throw our little spill in here. Please like, subscribe, ring that bell, follow along in the upcoming episodes. We have even more guests, and including Mike, he's coming back. You won't want to miss those. Also, feel free to send us questions and comments. Again, we invite your input on topics you'd like us to cover that would enhance your financial life. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on. We really, really do appreciate it. And I want to tag your school one more time. It's therealtyschool.com. And I don't know if you had a phone number you wanted to offer, or this is...
Sure. You can always get a hold of us at 651-644-5856.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Again, this is Michael Brennan. He's from therealtyschool.com. This has been Give Me Credit. I'm J.S. Waldo. You can find me on Substack, jswaldo.substack.com. Mortgage underwriter of over 35 years. This is John Mackey, our credit genius. You can find him at creditgenius.substack.com. And again, I always tell you, if you're not following along, you're missing out. This man's hysterical and extremely, extremely brilliant. And the writing he's doing is so important. Please follow.
I agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mike, thanks again, bud.
Take good care, everybody. I appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.